This is rental car number 90, and today I'm driving the 2018 Nissan Frontier SV with a V6. And I also wanted to mention that this is the crew cab model, so it's the larger of the two extended cab models available on the Frontier. That's a good thing. We get more space in the back seat, and there's also a couple extra options we get to talk about. It does, however, mean that the bed is smaller. This is a 60-inch long bed, but I still think there's plenty of room back there to do everything you need with a small pickup like this. Anyway, let's start off by jumping inside, popping the hood, and taking a look at the engine. So the Frontier is a 4-door mid-size pickup. The SV trim level comes with a 5-speed automatic transmission. This one happens to have a 4-liter V6 engine. That is an additional option, so it's a little extra money, but I think it's well worth it because it kicks out an impressive 261 horsepower and gets you some really good gas mileage. On this one, you get 16 miles per gallon in the city, 23 on the highway with a combined MPG of 19, which is pretty decent. You also get a 21.1 gallon fuel tank, and that fuel tank door is on the driver's side. Let's put that all together. This is the Frontier, but it's the SV trim level, as a V6 engine, and it's the crew cab. All that combined gets you a starting price of about $26,000. And I think that's important to keep in mind, right? This is not the most expensive, highest-end pickup truck on the road. It's actually pretty reasonably priced, in my opinion. And I think that's why I'm so impressed with the Frontier. Honestly, this drives a lot like a sedan. It's actually really similar to the Nissan Altima I drove 2 weeks ago. The acceleration is great, and the cornering is really impressive. I don't know why, but it feels really strong when you're going around turns. It hugs the road extremely well. I don't feel like I'm going to slip at all, and sometimes I get that feeling when I'm driving some of the larger pickup trucks out there, but not with the Frontier. But please, take this with a big grain of salt, because I'm not a performance guy. I drive these cars mostly for work, do a lot of highway miles, and I just want something comfortable that's going to keep up with traffic. And the Frontier does that really well. So with that in mind, let's jump inside and talk about the things I really care about, mostly comfort and design. And let's start by talking about the keys. And you do get a traditional key on the Frontier, right? No key fob, although you do get a remote. It's got 3 basic buttons on it: lock, unlock, and panic. And quite honestly, it's a little too light for my taste. I like these to be a little bit heavier, and I love it when they have a little bit of metal on them. This is all plastic. And because you get a key, no push button start, you just insert it the old-fashioned way, right to the right of the steering wheel, up on the dash. The steering wheel is a nice circular shape. It's wrapped in, I'm going to call it leather feeling plastic, which feels pretty good in your hand. On the left-hand side, you get a number of buttons: your volume rocker and your phone controls. Also buttons to interact with the entertainment features in the vehicle. On the right-hand side, you get your cruise controls. I like that there's this little switch right here. It's actually really convenient to use, although it does feel slightly outdated. And then up above the steering wheel, you get a gauge cluster with 2 big dials and 2 smaller dials with a little bit of accents in red. I'm a little bit disappointed in the gauge cluster. Nissan is actually known for having really nice screens embedded here, but you don't get that on the Frontier. This feels, well, it feels really outdated, but I guess it works fine. But let's move on by shifting your gaze to the left of the steering wheel. Here's where you have your window controls and door locks. Everything's made out of pretty high quality feeling plastic. Not the nicest materials out there, but it feels like it'll hold up. And then up on the dash you have a light to turn on and off the cargo lamp, and then another control to adjust the side view mirrors. And speaking of the side view mirrors, they're pretty standard. There's no blindside detection on the Frontier, and I was a little disappointed that there's no additional cutout. You know, like an extra little mirror pushed up into the corner of the mirror to give you extra visibility. But I guess I can't complain, because overall visibility was fine with these mirrors. And then jumping back into the vehicle and looking up, you have a sunglass holder here, along with 2 lights to illuminate the cabin, and a fairly simple control to adjust whether or not the lights are going to turn on when you open the doors of the vehicle. Below there's also the rear view mirror, although this doesn't have any buttons embedded on it, so there's no garage door opener controls here, just a standard rear view mirror. And below there you have a nice little storage cutout right on top of the dash. This is about a 1/2 inch deep, so it's perfect to keep your cell phone or your toll pass. Honestly, I found myself using this quite a bit while I was driving around in the Frontier. And then below there, you have your display in the center console. Unfortunately, this is not a touchscreen, so you will have to use all those buttons you see surrounding the screen. And also, this is a little bit outdated, right? You don't have a lot of menus, there's not a lot of options here, but there is Bluetooth connectivity, and I was able to connect my phone relatively quickly, and it worked fine. There's also a CD player and a radio, and the ability to connect your phone or your iPod via a USB cable. And then below there, your climate controls. I like that these are really simple, right? 2 dials, one for temperature, one for fan, and then big buttons to control all the other important features. Unfortunately, the materials in the dial feel a little bit cheap, so when you do turn them, they feel like they slip just ever so slightly. But overall, the whole system works fine, and I had no trouble getting the cabin of the vehicle to a comfortable temperature. Below there, you also have the controls to turn on and off traction control, and then a small storage cutout that wasn't quite big enough for my cell phone, but I bet you could find a use for it. To the right of there, you do have some ports, a auxiliary jack, USB port, and then a power port, but you will need an adapter for that because it's in the form of a cigarette lighter. So now we've reached the very bottom. We're kind of at knee height right now, and there's a couple of features I want to point out. First off, this storage area was perfect for my cell phone. It's generally where I kept it the whole time I was driving the Frontier. A little bit behind there, there's a small storage cutout that I didn't use at all, but I think could be useful given enough time driving this pickup. The gear shift itself it's a little bit clunky. It does take a little bit of muscle to push it through those gears, but overall it worked fine. And then behind there, you have 2 cup holders. The highlight here is that there's a removable lining to this, so it should be very easy to clean. And then next to there, you have your parking brake. It's in the form of a hand brake, which I've actually come to like recently. The electronic parking brakes are kind of giving me problems lately, so this is good. And then the last thing I want to talk about in this general area is the center armrest. There is some storage underneath, and it's nice to see that Nissan has included some sort of modular organizational thing. I don't really know the name for it. It looks like it's perfect for change and maybe some business cards. There's also a power port down here that you will need an adapter for, but it's good to see that it's included. And then this space is also pretty deep, so I just want to give you kind of a quick taste by putting my cell phone at the bottom, but there's actually quite a bit of room down here, which is another nice added plus. And then to finish out the front seat, we got to talk about the glove boxes, because there are 2, one on top, one on bottom. Both are fairly small, but it's nice to have 2 storage areas on this side of the vehicle. You really don't see this very often. Alright, so that's all the major highlights from the front seat of the Frontier. Let's jump in the back seat and take a look at what kind of amenities, if any at all, your passengers are going to get to enjoy. Alright, so bear with me. I'm going to be negative for just a minute. First off, legroom. It's not great. I'm 6 feet tall. I had, 2 inches of legroom between my knees in that front seat, which is okay, but not exceptional. Also, there's no dedicated vents back here. Usually you see them on the back of the center armrest for the front seat. All you have on the Frontier is this fancy cup holder, which is neat, but I don't know, a little bit disappointing. Also disappointing is that there's no center armrest at all back here. Usually it folds down from the center seat, but that does not exist on the Frontier. And then last negative comment, I promise I'll go back to positive. This window works great, but there's no electronic controls, which means you got to be in the back seat if you want to open or close it. But now let's get positive, right? Underneath the seats back here, you do have some additional storage bins. I think this is great. I love it when there's extra places to store tools on pickup trucks, and the Frontier has that. These are also removable, so they're pretty easy to wash and keep clean. All right, so that's all the major highlights of the back seat. That leaves only one spot left to talk about, and that's the bed in the very back of the truck. As I mentioned before, this is the crew cab model, so that back seat does eat up a little bit of the storage space back here. I'm also a little disappointed to see that the wheel wells are infringing on this space so much. I like to see a nice rectangular bed so you can take advantage of all of that space. But with that being said, you do get 5 feet of length, which is pretty good. I do want to point out, though, that the bed lining, I noticed on this pickup truck, which is fairly new, was already sort of coming undone. So you could push it around a little bit when you were walking back here. No big deal. I'm sure it'll hold up fine, but I did want to point that out. And then lastly, I did want to point out that this one does have a trailer hitch, which is great to see. And I think out of the like 250 rentals I've had so far. I don't review all of them, but out of all the cars I've driven so far, this is the first one with a trailer hitch, which is it's kind of cool. All right, so that's pretty much everything end to end on the 2018 Nissan Frontier. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to drive this car for very long. I only had it for 2 days and I was only able to put about 140 miles on it. That's kind of low for me. But even though I had the truck only for a short period of time, I think I got a good feel for it. So what you should be asking me is whether or not I would recommend this pickup truck to you, yes or no. Yes, look, I will be the first to admit that the Nissan Frontier is a bit outdated. You can especially see that in the display in the center console. It's not even a touchscreen, it doesn't have a whole lot of features. The back seat is void of amenities for your passengers, but even with all that considered, for some reason, it just works. I think because this is a cheaper, budget-friendly pickup truck, I just kind of expect it to be a little bit rugged, and it is. And that's fine with me, especially since it drives so well. Anyway, that's my take on it. If you disagree, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time when I review my 91st rental car. I'll see you then.